Time for Wine Talks with Paul K.
Fascinating story.
This is Robert Mondavi from the Michael Mondavi Winery.
Guy tastes a lot of wine.
Having a conversation with Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary,
Michael Silacci, Opus One Winery.
incredible conversation with Dr. Mia Ruth.
No matter what, you're definitely going to feel better.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio in beautiful Southern California, about to have a conversation with the two guys, the Talkin' Wine, Michael Pinkus and André Proulx. Introductions in just a second. Wine Talks, of course, available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you hang out for your podcasting, and always sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club, now supporting the Napa and Canadian series of wine. That's joke. I'm joking. So have a listen. We just got done from a trip in Napa. Had a great conversation with Rex Pickett, who's bringing out a second version of Sideways in a hardback, signed autograph copies. You get on his website, but it's a fascinating story what's happened to him in the last few years after, of course, the success of the movie 2004, Sideways. But now we're here to see and have a conversation with Michael and André. Welcome to the show, you guys.
Has it really been 2004?
That's when the movie came out, yeah.
We're old, guys. We're all old. That's just the reality of what's happening.
You know what's crazy? He was telling me, and I was telling this to Michael off camera, but when I saw him 3 years ago, it just wasn't going that great. He's like, I wish I would take on my father's laundry business, and I only make 80 cents on the book, and I made no money on the movie. Like literally, the people that made money on the movie, the producer, the hotel, which is now called the Sideways Hotel, and the Hitching Post restaurant. And now I was telling Michael, he's an experience in Napa. You can go to a Napa winery, and he's there, and you'll get books signed, and people want to ask him questions. And he's saying that the culture of Sideways is way more interesting and interested by people in Napa than it is in Santa Ynez in the Central Valley, Central Coast. Isn't that crazy?
So his new book, is that going to be a continuation, or is it just the same book he's bringing out again? Or
well, it's the same. The Sideways hardcover is the same book that was turned into the screenplay, and then the movie.
Yeah, I have the soft cover.
That's all they had originally.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I never read the book. I've only seen the movie.
Well, the book is actually very close. But the one thing about when you read the book, you realize this is not a fictional story. This is this guy's life, and he'll confirm that he was this down and out writer, doing nothing, and headed up to Santa Ynez just to hang out and try to get some cheap wine. Really, that's all he was doing.
You talked about like the Sideways experience moving to Napa. I think that's something that a lot of people outside of California, not just in Canada where we're located everywhere, is just the fact that Napa is such a power horse that, it just becomes synonymous with California wine in general, right? Like, it's even something now. I have an Instagram account called Captain Chardonnay that I don't do enough with that I should. And there's some great agents in Ontario that are bringing some stuff. And I bought a bunch of Chardonnay from Santa Cruz Mountains. I had to look that up. I didn't realize that there was Chardonnay in Santa Cruz Mountains. Yeah. And I can't remember the producers, so I'm sorry. I'd have to go back to my Instagram feed. But a couple of them were like dead ringers for Burgundy. And it's just like, the variety of what you get in California is incredible and underrated, and something needs to be done in the marketing world to pull California out of that gravitational pull of the Napa Valley. Not that there's anything wrong with Napa, it's just bigger than Napa,
But better than a dead ringer for love. But yeah,
that's right. But that's an interesting point. This industry is crazy right now, but they've done a lot of things in the Central Coast for the last 5 to 15 years, where they're growing varietals that they didn't grow before. Chardonnay's always been kind of a staple there, so is Pinot Noir. But they're growing Bordeaux varietals there that are actually really incredible and really speak of some kind of terroir, some kind of difference between them and the Napa wine. So I think it's a good point. But look,
why weren't they using those grapes beforehand? Just too cool, or
the weather's wasn't perfect, and so they never had them, and they started planting them. They started with Cabernet Franc, was something a little easier to grow, and then looking for that backbone from Cabernet Sauvignon. And the Cabernet Sauvignon are totally different than their Napa counterparts. They're not these opulent, juicy things. They're rather structured and have a backbone of acid that I really think is fabulous. off the top of my head, Beckman is one that I really think is great wine. Sold a ton of it during COVID, actually. I forgot about that.
Sounds like Paul needs to come up here.
Yeah,
you bet.
I mean, we've got the Cabernet Franc's a staple down in the Niagara region. I'm not going to have strong feelings about some of the other varieties. It's funny that we kicked off talking about Sideways because on our podcast, Two Guys Talking Wine, I'm on the record of saying that Merlot in Niagara, just so no one listening to your podcast misconstrues it, because I do love Merlot, but Merlot from Niagara is a weed and should be pulled up, and people should be planting more Cabernet Franc.
I have a different opinion. And we've discussed this on our show occasionally. Our Merlot seems to need some time. That's the thing. Whereas a California Merlot, you could drink, 2 years after bottling, and boom, it's great. Here, you need at least 4 or 5 years for it to kind of develop its structure and become a wine that you want to drink. What's that old joke about? About women take us and they beat us and they do everything until we're okay to take out for dinner or something. Yeah, same thing with Merlot around here, right?
But Niagara, I mean, look, you're talking about where ice wine is grown and made, and Rieslings and cool weather grapes, and now you've got a Merlot. I don't believe I've ever had a Niagara-based Merlot or any.
I mean, that's it. We talked about the problem with marketing in Napa, Ontario. We're dealing with similar issues in terms of marketing. Is like Inniskillen, our OG winery up here, caused a world stir by becoming known for ice wine, and we do make ice wine here, but it's not something that's consumed by the locals. I mean, the way that people, wine lovers in this area, look at ice wine, it's a product for export. Like every duty-free shop in Canada will be, floor to ceiling with bottles from Inniskillen and Jackson Triggs.
It's Canada's great re-gifted wine. That's what it is. Like, we get it and we give it away the moment we get it.
This is really disappointing.
Well, but it's also perception of climate, though. Like, it's perception of climate that people think that it's cold place here, but the summers here are hot. Our growing season starts a little late. Like, a bud break usually happens around April, May, late April, early May. But, I'm mucking around with a little bit of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. We harvest almost like clockwork the 3rd, 4th week of September 25th. We've harvested every year for that. Cab Franc is off by late October. And I mean, it stays above zero. It stays above 32. It stays above freezing here.
Yeah, right. It's Fahrenheit around here, okay?
Yeah, it stays.
The thing we really have problems with is Cabernet Sauvignon, right? Yes. Cabernet Sauvignon is a late ripener. We have guys that hang it into December. So, again, I would yank that weed before we yank Merlot, but
I'm with you on that.
Who's gonna yank Cabernet Sauvignon, right? It would be like cutting off your nose to spite your face. Although we only ripen it 3 out of every 10 years properly.
And once again, talking about marketing, we've had a few people throw that term around here from the tourism industry, calling us the Napa of the North, right down to the fact that there's people who have a few bucks in their pockets, set up a winery in the Napa of the North, and think we should be making Napa graped wines. We should not.
Yeah, that's a huge fallacy. But I wonder, if you talk to the guys in Burgundy, I just had a guy on the show, winemaker Frederick Barnier, and they're dealing with climate change and I had a conversation yesterday as well with the winemaker in Napa about climate change. But what it's done, I mean, it's real. This is not a political show, all right? We're not going to get into why it's like that. But it's happening. And so in Burgundy, regions that weren't, that pedigree now are starting to produce some pretty good grapes. And places like, Sussex, England is making incredibly world-class sparkling wine. And so
but you don't need ripe grapes for to begin with, right, Paul?
That's true. But you couldn't do it before. So maybe look, I'm disappointed in this Inniskillen because I've got 2 cases here, which cost me a fortune to bring in here. And one of them is the Cabernet Franc ice wine, which is absolutely fabulous.
Oh, it's so insane. It's a stunning ice wine. Just nobody in Ontario is drinking that.
Nobody's drinking that. Well, it is sweet and very caloric.
I can tell you a similar story, Paul. When I was in Italy last year, I was in Tuscany in the Chianti region, and I met some guy, and I tasted probably one of the most structured, the Chianti Classico Grand Selezione that I'd ever tasted. And I'm asking the guy, I said, where are your grapes? And he's like, I'm on the highest part in the region. And in fact, we're over 500 meters. But when he started like 20 years ago, He was told not to say he was at 500 meters. He was supposed to say he was, 4.5 meters. That's what the winemaker said. Because everybody said you're going to be making weedy wine, and that's what everybody's going to think you're making. Now he looks like a genius to go that high.
That is interesting. I haven't heard Italian stories about this. It's been mostly French, and a little bit of Napa. California is not quite affected yet, but they're all planning for it. In Burgundy at Louis Jadot, they've planted 9 rows of a total of about 11 acres worth of 9 different rootstock.
Oh, interesting.
They're going to wait like 10 years. This was fascinating about Burgundy for me anyway, probably most of the wine world if you really think about it. But they're going to plant this rootstock. They're going to find out what's resistant, what isn't, how it handles the weather, all the things that they're looking for, all the variables, which means they got to keep all the other variables constant so that whatever they determine is contributed to the rootstock. But they're talking 10 years out minimum before they start making wine from it. And so they're really planning for the next generation of winemaker to figure this out. I mean, it's really one of these industries. What industry does that where you're like planning for somebody else that's going to run the place?
It almost feels though like what's happened in Niagara and also in Ontario. There is a combination, I guess, sort of bracing for the impacts of climate change on the industry. Like we have a few people who are mucking around with stuff, but also improvements in viticultural practices that I think would have come along had we not had to deal with changes in climate or extreme weathers, whatever it may be. Like we have another region to the east of Toronto, like due north of, I don't know, I actually don't know what it's due north of, Michael. Like help me out. Prince Edward County. We got Prince Edward County.
Somewhere up there.
No, it's due south of Belleville, but it's east of
Toronto.
But
no one in California knows where Belleville is.
Correct, but it's sitting in the middle of the lake, right? So
all right. But we have a region that
north of nothing.
Does really great Pinot Noir Chardonnay, and it's the same situation as with Niagara, where the summer growing conditions are good, bud break in April, harvest in September, October, blah blah blah. But the winters are what kill the vines. It consistently gets down to minus 18 Celsius, and I apologize. That must be close to 0 degrees.
18, maybe a little colder 36.
No, they meet at 30.
That's very close to 0. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's a temperature that kills the vines so that they don't come back. So they actually bury them, and there's certain places who are working with what they're calling geotextiles. So you look at the vineyards in the winter in Ontario and in Quebec and in a few other places where it looks like little army tents. And what this has done is improved crop yields, improved the mortality rate. So you're not killing a lot of vines in the winter. And it's just like, yeah, we're preparing for climate change, but it's also if we need to go cooler and find cooler places to plant grapes so that we can still continue to drink the wines that we want to drink, you need to worry about not just rootstocks and clones and varieties, but also how to keep your friggin' vines alive.
Well, it's why the Spanish and the Chileans are going up. They're going into the hills.
Well, look, the Argentinians, I've just tasted some wines where they planted at 4 different elevations the same clone of Malbec. One was at 1,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 4,000, 5,000 feet for Malbec.
Yeah.
Fabulous wines. So what are the Canadians? I forgot where you guys are exactly. What part?
We're basically in Niagara. Let's be honest. Andre's moved into Hamilton, and I'm already in Niagara. So
on the east,
we're east. We're west of Toronto, but we are. Andre's. What are you? You're like
okay.
40 minutes away from Niagara.
Yeah, we're sort of splitting hairs. Like if you take a look at Lake Ontario, you got Buffalo at the bottom, like where my thumb is. I guess picture like a sea. You got Buffalo at the bottom part of the sea. You got Toronto at the top of the sea. The armpit right at the middle is where I live, and everything from the armpit to Buffalo is where the good grapes grow, and everything on the north side is where we want to sell wine because there's like 9 million people who live around the lake here. It is a metropolis that goes from Toronto all the way down to Hamilton. Fantastic restaurants. The Michelin Guide just came to Toronto.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the Michelin Guide isn't where you want to eat.
And they just left. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it though. Like, I'll be honest. Like, fine dining isn't what Toronto does well. I'm glad to tell your audience that. But I mean, follow me or Michael on social media at André Wine Reviewer at The Grape Guy, and hit us up for restaurant recommendations. Those places that are like really sort of farm to table and a little bit grittier. Like, we've got a place in Toronto called Antler, where the dude was. He hunts. He's a proud hunter. He likes finding really great ways to prepare wild game. And like PETA was protesting his restaurant for years. And this is the guy where he went to the window and butchered a deer in the window in front of the protesters.
Wow.
Like, no, like it's just like, yeah.
We ran up with a Syrah.
Pardon me?
That's what he did. Yeah, he was looking to marinate.
Yeah.
That's what he was looking to do.
I wish I had a geography teacher that would use that same tool you just used. Here's the sea. This is Buffalo. This is Toronto.
Yeah.
And here's the armpit, which is where André lives. Yes, that is.
The reason I brought it up, my daughter just moved to Potsdam. I mean, literally like 3 days ago. You know where Potsdam is?
No.
It's not the edge of the world, but you can see it from there. It's like you've got to fly into Montreal to get there. That's how far north it is in New York.
Okay.
Potsdam. What the hell? Anyway, we were going to talk about celebrity wines, but I want to before we get into that, I want to talk about like what are Canadians drinking there? What has happened the last few years since we last spoke about consumptions and what people are doing? What are they thinking in wine? Are they collecting? Are they drinking the same stuff that we were talking about last time? Some of the sort of mid-range things.
Well, during the pandemic, we were drinking seltzer like crazy. So,
the White Claw. White Claw blew up here.
I don't understand that. Let me see if I can run this logic by you, because the millennials, which is what are drinking that. Yeah, I know. I have 3 of them. Don't worry. I'm not criticizing them yet. But the sustainable farming, biodynamic food, farm-to-table restaurants, organic food, natural wine, which we'll talk about because it doesn't mean anything. But then that's what they want. But then they turn around and drink White Claw, which is...
It's because things got so bad that we want to put booze in the water. That's exactly what happens.
And
but also
sparkle it up with phony flavoring.
Yeah, the whole concept of even like manufacturing the clear liquor that goes into that. Like, we have a small spirits, like an artisanal spirits industry starting to pop up here, which is insane because the taxation on it is over the top. But it's just like getting a chance to taste proper vodka from people who really know how to make vodka and care about making vodka is a completely different experience than watering it down, bubbling it up, and filling it with artificial flavors, exactly like you just said. It doesn't make sense. It completely doesn't make sense.
But they went crazy for it. It was I did an article at some point what we were drinking during the pandemic, and it was embarrassing to see the stuff that had, White Claw was number 1, but 3 of the flavors were in the top 5, and wine wasn't even in it. I think Smirnoff vodka was in the top 5. Everybody went back to the classics. Oh, and Wildberry Cooler.
The classics. I like the way you call that.
Well, it's the classics. When you're growing up, that's what you had.
Smirnoff
right?
was it. Well, there was a shelf talker at Walmart the other day, and they were closing out the White Claw. Now maybe it was an expiration date issue, but I don't know. I was hoping it was a statement on the economy and the fact that kids realized it tasted like crap.
Well, André, did you not tell me at some point the White Claw is finally starting to wane in its?
Well, there were a lot of people who threw their hats into the ring. A lot of companies, like all the big manufacturers, were getting into that seltzer business, and we've seen it plateau, and it's starting to collapse a bit. But I don't think we've really seen that. I know the displays at our monopoly in Ontario, the LCBO, have definitely gotten smaller. But I mean, it's one of those things. You and I focus on wine so much that I don't know. I'm sure we could find the statistics on what the sales have been doing, but yeah, I think it's pulled back a little bit. But also, I think as we're like getting out of the pandemic, people are just drinking a little bit less in general now that we can do stuff, not just sit home and drink White Claw and watch television.
For sure. That's for sure that happening.
That's what I'd like to do.
What is there a movement toward? Last time we spoke, I don't think we discussed this, but is there a movement toward organic and biodynamic wines that somebody thinks is important? And you mentioned the word natural, which in America there's no such definition.
I have thoughts on this, but I'll let André go first because I
think I'm a little bit closer to this. So during the pandemic, I know that we did see a lot more people start to support local, which was a surprise because a lot of people in Ontario don't drink Ontario wine, which blows my mind because Michael and we've spent a lot of time talking about how good they are, and we know what they are. We do our show in a global context. We know where the wines stand. But in terms of organic and biodynamic farming, we deal with a lot of disease pressure for the wines that are made locally. So it's tough to get on board that train in terms of the local farming. In terms of what people are buying, yes, there are an insane number of natural wine bars, natural wine bottle shops that are popping up. And it's really entrenched itself in the culture. But what we're starting to see now, finally, thank God, is a bit of a backlash in terms of what does natural wine mean? This fizzy, Brett riddled Gamay that was fermented in a plastic barrel that was farted on by the owner's cow to make it supernatural is, I think, something where consumers are pushing back a little bit and saying, hey, maybe this isn't the great thing. Like, let's ask some questions about why things are good. And then it's cool. And we're seeing like a producer like Marcel Lapierre, which has always been a popular wine here, but people coming back to be like, no, this is what fits the definition of natural wine, and it is not a faulted piece of trash. It is a beautiful $50 Morgon that people should be excited to drink, and that is what we should be using as a template for natural wine. So, Michael, let me hand you your soapbox because I know you're going to have a lot of thoughts on this.
Well, I'm getting tired of I like, first of all, pet nat drives me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how. It's the biggest scam ever performed on the wine drinking public. First of all, you're paying, let's say, $40 for half a bottle of wine. It comes in a $7.50, but half of it ends up on your ceiling because it explodes the moment you open it, and the other half is full of sediment, so you can't drink it. So, I never understand pet net. Orange wine, for me, for every one that I taste that's drinkable, there's another 10 that that I wouldn't clean the toilet with, and then I don't know,
just to add an asterisk to the orange wine movement, like the skin contact whites is something that's happening in Ontario, but I think the wineries here are almost afraid to go all in on it because a lot of them are making it with like Vidal, which is a grape we usually reserve for ice wine. And it can be made into a half decent table wine, but it's the one where when you go to a winery that focuses on Chardonnay and Pinot Noir at like $30-$40 a bottle, they've got, and we've got some Vidal for $12 a bottle as well. Like it's I don't think we've had any wineries really be courageous enough to be like, you know what, we're going to do this with our Riesling. We're going to do this with our Chardonnay. And a handful have. So anyone in Ontario listening, I know you, I see you, but like, let's face it, the people who are blazing the trails are still mucking around with grapes that are not a lot of skin in the game for them.
I don't think.
And then there was this. Now I haven't seen much about it, André. So hopefully it's died its way through. But there was this movement to start making Piquette, which was
that's still here.
Terrible.
No, that's still here.
No, it's still made.
Yeah, and it's like flying off the shelf, dude.
People should be shot for this crap.
I don't get it. In the feds in America, there is no definition for natural food,
yep.
Let alone natural wine, as you guys alluded to. And so what does that mean? And I guess people, come down to like less intervention, but less intervention doesn't mean it has to taste like kombucha. And I agree with you guys completely. I taste a lot of really bad wines here. I think orange wine, the extended contact with skin is kind of a good idea. It's kind of fun. You might get some character that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, but it's not an excuse to make something that's really unpalatable. And I don't understand why people would muscle something like that down thinking it's some kind of health beverage, because it isn't. I mean, yeah, it's got some health benefits to it if you drink it right, but as itself, it's not a drink that you're supposed to consume.
It's good for an enema.
Yeah.
So that's the health benefits, I guess.
Yeah, I never thought of that. I had to.
Well, I
actually, I should have thought of that.
Paul.
You know what? I'm sure that I'm guessing from your strong take on this, though, that a lot of people in your audience are probably not large consumers of natural wine. But there's one thing. I was actually talking to someone who was formerly quite a big zealot in the natural wine world, and she's one where she actually, like, we had good debates in the past. Her name's Laura Milnes. She runs Crushable Wine Club, and she's come back on it. And this whole low intervention thing, it's important that people remember, as natural as you want to be, wine does not exist without the intervention of man. You can't leave grapes out there and have it turn into wine. You need to intervene. So, like, yeah, it's cool that you don't want to put sulfur, that maybe you want to be more mindful of what additions are going into winemaking. Wine doesn't exist without intervention. So this That's whole true. Like no intervention is minimal intervention as possible is like, it's marketing. It's marketing, and you're falling for it hook, line, and sinker.
Well, the problem, what I see this, most wine always was and has been for millennial natural. Let's using the word, or organic. There was none of this stuff around. The Bordelais invented this copper sulfate, like, I don't know, in the 50s or the 40s. It's kind of new, really. So if you think about it, and they go back to these old vintages of Burgundies and Bordeaux's and even California wines, I think Peter Mondavi told me that they're 49 or they're 52 or something, won some great award recently because they opened it up and it was fabulous. That was natural. That was organic. They didn't do anything to those wines. They didn't have the things to do it. So I'm arguing. I sort of deal with this marketing of this idea, like you're saying. The kids are being duped. People are being duped into thinking this is something special when it always was.
Yep.
And so if you're not drinking those kinds of wines anyway, then you need to go back to the wines that founded this industry and founded this country on wine. I mean, in the French and the English as well.
And I agree with you completely, Paul. But there is now. I'm not going to name names. Andre will know who I'm talking about. But we used to have a winemaker here that used to talk about how you can augment a wine. If it's got raspberry flavor, you can throw some raspberry juice in it, and you can juice it up. That's
I don't even remember who you're talking about. Thank God, because I so would have thrown the name out there if I knew who you were talking about.
They called it Jimmy juicing. That's what they called it. And you talked about how you could add chocolate extract or add raspberry extract or blueberry extract. And you could augment a wine that way, and especially for awards. But that's, all right. That's what he was teaching a whole generation, because he was a teacher finally, and that's what he's teaching a whole generation of winemakers over here.
Okay. Let me be the token millennial on the group here and be a little bit of devil's advocate on this, though, because it is tough to define things and have transparency in winemaking, though. But at what point, though, do we want a little bit more transparency in how the wine is made? Because Yellowtail is a punching bag of mine. So, Paul, if they sponsor your podcast, please just bleep out the name of the winery I'm about to say. But that is a product made in a factory like Coca-Cola, where its intention is to taste the same for the consumer, regardless of vintage.
It's a formula wine.
And that's it. So at what point do you want to disclose to consumers and to millennial consumers that this is an artisanal wine? And yeah, maybe it was made with fish bladders to do the clarifying, and there's a little bit of sulfur in it. But it was made by this family in California that makes 50,000 cases a year. It is not factory produced, where gnarly head or toasted head Chardonnay is made in the factory up the highway to make 1 million cases a year to fit a market spec. Like, is there, how do we make that clear to the market, where there's that line between factory made wines and artisanal made wines?
But on the other hand, are people willing to spend the money for artisanal wines versus their Yellowtails and their gnarly head? Like, gnarly head's going to be $20. Your artisanal wine's going to be $40 to $50. Which do people want to put their money into on a nightly or a daily basis? That becomes the other question.
It's an ongoing discussion. It's a very important discussion, because in the 70s, when my father stopped at Sutter Home and had a glass of White Zinfandel with Bob Trincaro, and that changed the landscape forever. The idea back then was, well, this will bring non-wine drinking people to the table. And I suppose the Yellowtails and the Cali Reds and the Martha Stewart Chardonnays that are sugared up, played with, regular flavor every time, a formula wine, as we call them, does the same thing. And so all we can do is hopefully bring to the table the idea, by listening to the shows, by reading the back label of another wine, or encouraging people to express themselves by going to the store and asking a question of the wine shop owner or even the department manager of a market. This is what I usually drink. I want to try to expand my palate. What do you recommend? And that's all we can hope, because for me, it's Cali Red. You were saying Yellowtail, and by the way, they're not a sponsor. For me, it's Snoop Dogg's Cali Red. It's most celebrity-based wines, because they really don't mean anything. The other day, I got a mailer at the house. This cracked me up, and I had this conversation yesterday with this marketeer. I think it was the Cameron Diaz wine. You guys have that up there?
Hasn't made it here yet.
Well, so it was made me
the
laugh.
One that smells like your cooch, or no, that's somebody else.
Well, if I knew what that smelled like, I would render an opinion, but I can't. And this is a family show. So but I laughed because the mailing piece, which was beautifully done, was the worst marketing piece I'd ever seen in the world of wine, because there's minimum things you need to do to solicit a response to get somebody to buy something. If you're selling bottles of wine the way they were doing it, not even a subscription, you mean it was a loser. I guarantee it was a loser. It's just pictures of her and her friend, and I don't know, this low alcohol stuff or what, which is another conversation we have to have. And I thought to myself, am I going to buy this just because there's Cavendish in wine? And she's touting it's healthier because it's low alcohol, which we have to have the discussion right now.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
André, you just
Food.
did
You guys
something
have
on low alcohol wine, did you not?
Oh, well, I did dry January on my radio show where I found some de-alcoholized wine, but that's something different. I do find it very disingenuous when celebrities or anyone are touting like lower alcohol as healthier, or just, I mean, the only way wine can be healthy, regardless of the alcohol content or the sugar content, is moderation.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, right. Okay, here, follow my algebra.
Okay.
Can you see these bottles in this picture? No, you can't see them.
No, but I can see the bottles over your shoulder.
Okay, 750 milliliter bottle, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
13.5% alcohol, so you're talking about 100 and some odd milliliters of alcohol. So if you distill it all out and there's nothing left but alcohol, you end up with maybe it's 1.5 inches, maybe 1.25 inches of alcohol at the bottom of that bottle. And then I saw at Whole Foods the other day that this is 11% low alcohol. Because you can make a Moscato like that, but you're not going to make a Chardonnay low alcohol for much less, even 10%. So what? So now it's 1.1 inches of that total bottle is alcohol versus 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. Like, that does anything to anybody? Does it really save you anything? And then they're talking about 120 calories a glass for, let's say, the Sauvignon Blanc regular, and this one's only 85. 35 calories, and you're going to sacrifice what tastes like really toilet water?
Okay, so during the year of the pandemic, I went on a diet and lost quite a bit of weight. And I have to tell you that I did it by counting calories. And I was making those decisions not with wine, because that's one thing. I'm married to a chef. I wouldn't sacrifice flavor for the sake of calories. But when I'm eating my breakfast or buying yogurt for breakfast, for example, I will reach for the 0% yogurt over the 2% yogurt, because the only difference in a half cup of yogurt is about 20 calories, but like those add up bit by bit. So I'm going to counter that to say that those 35 calories, the people who care about the number of calories in a glass of wine, make a big difference to them.
That's what my wife said.
Sorry. I'm taking your wife's side on this one.
That's all I need.
I do a rosé report every year, and I get some of those low calorie rosés end up at the door. I'll be honest with you, there was only one that really impressed me. It was a local one, and it actually had some flavor to it. Although it had a counterpart that was terrible, and then there was about 4 more that, again, were undrinkable. So, I
don't understand that. Why? What?
I also don't understand why. Like wine, like we said, like wine is meant to bring pleasure. And I think if you're at the point where you're willing to sacrifice the quality of a product for the sake of calories, like wine isn't food that you need. Wine is a luxury. So like, it's a disconnect in my head about making that sacrifice, right? Like, I like chocolate. I'm not going to buy a low calorie chocolate. If I want a piece of chocolate, I'm going to eat it in moderation.
Right. That's a good point.
It's just overindulge, one of the two. You can do either or.
And I think part of that's tied together to this idea of people that buy Cali Red or Martha Stewart Chardonnay or Cameron Diaz low alcohol wine. One day, and the millennials too, okay, I'm gonna point right at you. The millennials too. Like, I've taught and I have 3 millennial daughters with 3 millennial son-in-laws, and I've taught them, obviously, they hang out at my house. It's kind of hard to go backwards after they taste the stuff that we drink. And that's the point we have to make, right? Like, when they had that one glass that sort of turns their head and makes them a fan. And I think with the millennials and even the Gen Zs, it's just a later part of the curve, because wine's been around for thousands of years, 8,000 that we know, and it's never really gone away. It's never really changed. The graph kind of goes up and down like real estate, but eventually it all goes up. Everybody eventually comes around to realize that wine is a different beverage. It's not for consumption like Coca-Cola. It's meant to take you someplace, some other place, at some other time for that moment that you're having it. And I think everybody will get that experience if they stay with it. And eventually, you can't go backwards.
That being said, we told you the story when we chatted on the phone earlier, though. Sarah Jessica Parker with In Vivo in New Zealand. Michael, do you want to pick up the story from here?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, she brought out a Sauv Blanc, and actually she gets involved in the winemaking. So it's actually quite interesting. And I just read, Andre, the other day, I guess In Vivo is doing pretty good. They have their own airline now in New Zealand.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that on Facebook.
They do wine tastings in the air. So, and then they take you. I don't know where they're taking you.
You fly around and land the same place you started, or what?
I think they were going to. They said they were going to somewhere. They were going to Auckland or something. They started somewhere else, but they do wine tastings on board as well. So something else that you can do in the air, I guess. But it's really interesting. But they must be doing well with Sarah Jessica Parker, or she's put some money into it, or.
You missed the part, though, where I was hoping you were going to tell the part of the story where when you and I were sent the media samples to taste, and you and I taste separate, and you actually phoned me up. I remember it was the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday or a Sunday, and you were just like, am I crazy? Or is this wine actually really good?
It was actually good. We were surprised by it. We tried to get her on a podcast, but I guess she doesn't want to talk about the wine.
You know what? I have had huge difficulty, though. I had Kevin O'Leary on the show because he sells a lot of wine, but most public figures don't want to talk about alcohol. I approached Vanna White, who apparently has an incredible palate, and she's like, my publicist won't let me talk about alcohol. But let's go back to the celebrity idea, because that's interesting.
Do you have any reason why, or they just won't let them talk about it?
I guess I don't know what their reputation about drinking. I don't know.
Well, I guess that means all three of us are not celebrities. So
yeah,
so much for that.
So when I was tapped by the easy for me to see the Professional Golf Association to put in a bid to be the PGA Wine Club, and this was many years ago, there were 16 golfers that made wine at the time. In fact, I was invited to Pinehurst during their big wine weekend. I gave a seminar to 50, 60 people on the 16 golfers: Annika Sorenstam and Nick Faldo and Fred Couples, Greg Norman. They all had wines.
I remember Norman's wine. I remember Faldo, but I didn't remember the other two.
Oh, then there were dozens. The one, Duffy Waldorf, was my favorite story because he was apparently known to be the clubhouse wine guy. Everybody went to him. Well, soon after I heard that, somebody brought in a Duffy Waldorf wine. It was $1. It was $1 US wholesale a bottle. They couldn't move it. They couldn't get rid of it. Nobody wanted it. It was okay. You could drink it, but it never took off. And so that's the point of this conversation is there's only one left, and that's Greg Norman. He does like Sarah Jessica Parker. He and his daughter are involved with the process. They taste the wines. They do the blends. They're intimately involved. It's the only celebrity golfer that's survived in the wine industry. But look at the rest of these things. I mean, there was I can't remember the NFL player that came through here. John Sally came here from the Lakers. He had a wine called the Vegan Wine Company. And it's a hilarious interview because he says, I'm having trouble selling this at the steakhouses.
Yeah, you wonder why. Mike Weir, when he won the Green Jacket, he started his own winery. He's long gone from that. I think golf wineries are gone. But there's that one guy from South Africa, the guy who stars in the Jurassic Park films.
Sam Neill?
What was it?
Sam Neill?
Sam Neill actually
Never
has a
had it.
winery. And he's actually hands-on
Well, South Africa too.
with it. So that I know because he came up here to Toronto once, and they said, "Oh, Sam Neill's going to do his wine, blah blah blah," and we walked in, and there's Sam Neill, and he's actually pouring his own wine, and you're like, "Geez, that I did not expect." So
Well, that's the difference. But now the millennials too young to know this. I would walk into a tasting in the early days. Pat Paulson, the comedian's pouring his wines. Dickie Smothers is pouring his wines. Fess Parker is pouring his wine. Dick Sanford pouring his wines. These guys they weren't celebrities when you walked into a wine tasting. They were wine people. They were farmers and they were agriculturalists. They wanted to present their product. And so, yes, Fess Parker gave me an autographed picture while I was there. That's true. But it was a different environment. It wasn't celebrity status. It was wine status. Now it's like there was a wine that came through here from Paso Robles. I forgot the football player's name. And they wanted, I'm going to say some numbers that maybe the listeners have never heard before. They wanted, I think, wholesale $20 a bottle. So that puts it around $30, $29 on the shelf. Okay. I know already that I could have bought that wine in a Shiner, which is an unlabeled bottle from the same winemaker, because I know them well. I used to buy thousands of gallons of wine from them. I could have paid $3.45 or $3.50 a bottle for the same exact juice. But because the football player puts his name on it, they hope to get more money. But why would you buy a wine because a football player? I mean, what is
actually? I think I know who you're talking
connection.
about. I think I have one of the bottles behind me somewhere. I could go fishing through it.
No,
I've been told it's pretty good juice, though.
Well, yeah, they are. The wines could be palatable, but why pay 30% extra?
I'm gonna look.
You're once again going full circle though, talking about the whole like White Claw phenomenon. That it's almost like the entire millennial experience is talking out of both sides of their mouths, right? Like we have the Post Malone rosé that people lined up to buy at the LCBO, and it's just like it just doesn't make sense that on one hand we're knocking down the door of farm to table restaurants, but also lining up for celebrity.
That's
made
a really
wine,
good point.
where the celebrity, that we don't ask the question whether or not the celebrity gives a crap about what they're putting their name on.
Yeah, they do 30%. They give a crap 30%.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, we
Exactly.
have Wayne Gretzky Winery up here. I think he was here once to help open the place, and nobody's seen him since.
Is it
Although
still
to be
functioning?
fair, that winery has turned a corner. They are making much better. So the experience is better. Like that was a grocery store. Like that was grocery store plonk for a long time, and they've breathed a bit of life into it.
Well, if you go there, there's still the grocery store plunk, but then there's also the higher end stuff. It's the stuff that's under the brown label that's actually drinkable. It's the white label stuff that's it's got Wayne Gretzky's name on it. People buy it, but if you actually go, and they've got some really great whiskeys as well that they make. So
Does that
You
tie
can
to
give a
this-
little bit more enthusiasm to the great one. I think the
Yeah,
one
that's
people
come on.
that ties this podcast together.
Jeez.
I
respect.
he's also got a winery out in California. So
Yeah, he does.
I take no pleasure in it because he was like a hero as I was growing up. I have 5 rookie cards from the guy. I was a big fan. But seeing what he's done to just slap his name on a winery in a number
It's
of
not
places.
The California wine is not cheap. That's an interesting point, though.
I would
because
expect nothing less from the great one.
there's a bottom fishing broker here. Won't use his name, but he's a great guy. But most of the stuff he brings in on Tuesday is just really bad. The other day, he brought in a whole line of Major League Baseball wines from all over the country. I don't think the Expos are on there, but the Dodgers, the Boston Red Sox, the Pirates, everybody. These were all clubhouse wines. Whoever made them, obviously the busted PO, they never got delivered, and now they're being dumped. And all of them were the same wine. Okay, I get that. But it was all staved up, probably oak chipped or maybe even oak additive. Terrible. It was terrible. And I thought, okay, if I'm a fan, and you're talking about the Gretzky experience here, wine is experiential, right?
Yep.
You go to that Napa Valley winery and you have this wonderful time. You're with your spouse, you're on a honeymoon, or you're not, or you're on your divorce moon, whatever it is. And then you have this experience, you have this great place, and you go, every time you get that package from their club, you go back to that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're going to the ball game and you have this glass of crap wine,
But if you
you're
think
not going to
about
want to remember that experience.
if you also think about what it's poured into at the ballpark, you're not getting proper stemware. Let's start there. You're getting it out of a Dixie cup if you're lucky. There's that.
That's true.
And you also, I would think, have to look, and I don't want to put everybody into the same cup here, but you have to think about the fans. There's more often than not that if I go to somebody's house to watch a hockey game, unless it's Andre's, and I don't think I've ever gone to watch a hockey game at your place, Andre, but
How
I'm
about
the
that?
guy who brings wine and I'm drinking wine while everybody else is drinking beer. And it used to happen when I'd go to a Super Bowl party. I'm the only guy drinking wine in a place full of beer, right? So, and then you'd go, hey, and they go, wait, what are you drinking? And you let them try it. And, you brought something along because one, you were going to drink it. And two, you knew you were probably the only one drinking it. And they'd try it and they'd go, it's okay. And then you're like, yeah, now I know why you're getting the Blue Jay wine, because you don't realize that I've just poured a, Camus special select, cab, and you're telling me that it's okay. And you're drinking Coors Light. I don't know what to say. Which
goes great with chicken wings that Camus, right? So,
what I'm saying is, I guess you've got to look at the fan base for most sports. I
agree with that.
Maybe it's beer they drink. It's easier to drink at a ballpark or at the hockey rink.
So maybe you're saying
serve a lot of wine. I don't see a lot of wine at sporting events.
Well, these are all these are all the dugout clubhouse guys. And I guess it doesn't matter so much. And look, I went to a ball game once with my friend, and we're at a baseball game at Dodger Stadium. Chavez Ravine, and my friend orders a peach martini. Okay, who does that? That's 20 years ago. He still hasn't heard the end of it because he never will. We're already at 45 minutes, you guys.
I can tell one more story about the Toronto Maple Leafs. I heard that there's like some head office guys and a few of the players go out and they do taste fine wine. They have some of the big agents come in and give them wine tastings. So it's interesting that the players understand. I just don't think it's the fans that do.
They don't. Hey, it's been a great conversation. I hope we can do it again next time out.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for having us back. Like it's cool to just to see same but different, even though we're a continent apart.
Most people don't have us back, except to apologize.
Well, we'll have you back again. Hopefully it doesn't take quite as long.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, cheers.